you've probably heard some of this before. It's something that I say on a regular basis, but for those people that joined us tonight for the first time, it's really lovely to have you. So Adult Cerebral Palsy Hub is a community-led organisation, and that's really important to us. We designed it so that we can empower and inform adults who suffer from CP. And it's the patient voice that's at the core of all the work that we do. And it's that distinguishes us, Adult CP Hub, from the other condition-focused medical charities. To date, over the last couple of years, we've managed to reach over 1,000 adults with CP. And we're well on our way, I think, to forming a mutually supportive community. And I don't think I have to convince any of you here this evening, but what we know as a community is that cerebral palsy is a lifelong condition. And although it's been traditionally considered a condition that affects children, what we know now is that over 130,000 people, adults in this country, have cerebral palsy. The other thing that's relatively new is that we've begun to understand that somebody living lifelong with cerebral palsy will associate other difficulties during their adulthood. And these difficulties demand a specialist care pathway so that we can achieve positive and long-lasting results. But we also know that coordinated and specialist services don't exist for adults today with cerebral palsy, unlike many other medical conditions. And it was really that inspired me and Miriam, that we needed a charity that specifically focused on adults with cerebral palsy. And our principles, the reason that we set the charity up is that we wanted parity of care between cerebral palsy and other neurological conditions. We wanted to see continuity of care so that it didn't matter where you lived in the country, but that you were able to access support. And importantly, that there were specialist treatments and specialist doctors who really did understand what it was like to live with cerebral palsy and how to help us to maximise our abilities in the long term. So when we set the charity up, we thought about the way that we wanted to work. And these things were the things that were really important to us. It was really important that those people with CP who are, as we know, the experts in their own condition, were those people that drove our agenda and that were in the driving seats for any decisions that we made. That it was the patient that mattered, but we did understand that we couldn't do it in isolation. So we've built a charity that thrives on collaboration and partnerships with others, because we know that there are lots of people within the sector who are working with other disabled people and with other children and adults with cerebral palsy, and we really do want to work together so that we can affect change. Ultimately, what we wanted to do was identify what works for adults with cerebral palsy and see if we can get it replicated across the country so that everybody in the UK had access to bespoke services for adults with cerebral palsy. Before the outbreak of COVID-19, what we found was that we had an adult cerebral palsy community that was already feeling marginalised, and they were having difficulties reporting things like physical degeneration, fatigue and tiredness, and living in pain. We also learned that adults with cerebral palsy were 40% more likely to be affected by mental health issues than the general population. Now, as you can imagine, the recent pandemic and a country in lockdown has exacerbated some of those difficulties, both in accessing timely healthcare and support, and the loneliness and isolation that has been created by being in lockdown. So we unfortunately have seen a community that's struggled through not being able to access regular support. And that's something that we weren't prepared to accept as okay. And that's where I feel that most of our work has been focused on it since March. So what have we done? So our progress in the last 18 months to 2 years, we've grown our membership. We've launched regular support groups, both online and through chat groups. And we've built partnerships with medical professionals, researchers and other charities and policymakers, so that we can try to improve the knowledge of other people out there who can support adults with cerebral palsy. And we've tried to build our reputation both nationally and internationally. What are our aspirations? Well, what we'd like is better understanding of CP as a lifelong condition, specialist services and clear care pathways, and as I said before, parity of care to which is afforded to other long-term conditions. But these aspirations are now, although these aspirations are now endorsed by the NICE guidelines, it might surprise you to know that even though there are now a very clear framework of care for adults with CP, there is no compulsion by the CCGs, those people that control the budgets and design services, to change services so that they meet these new standards. And so this is something that Adult CP Hub will continue to lobby for. But as you can imagine, as a small and relatively new organisation, we began to understand that overhauling the NHS on our own would be virtually impossible. But we also understood that we've seen actually that the NHS can move and can change, and it can happen relatively quickly. We've seen that with COVID, but that it requires public pressure. So what we seek to do over the last few months is to grow our community, to build a momentum, to create the change that we require. And we knew that to do that, what we need to do is to grow our community and empower them. And that's where I'd like to talk to you about the three pillars of the charity that we're working towards today. So we have been trying as much as we can to offer community support, to build an engaged community that can support each other. And we hope we've tried to build a framework in which there are opportunities for you to come together as a community and offer support and advice and experience to one another. We hope in the long term to have our own helplines and to grow these virtual support groups into actual support groups once COVID is a part of our past and not necessarily our present. The other key thing for us is to help the community manage and become experts in their own condition. And we've seen some of our community embark on a movement challenge, helping the community to get active, because we know that that's the best way to keep people motivated and to keep people being able to manage their condition for longer. In the long term, we'd like to offer everybody the opportunity to become experts in their own condition, and we hope to roll out the expert patient programme in the next few months. And third and finally, but by no means least, we are trying to give a voice to this community, to change the perception of the general public of what living with cerebral palsy is like, what somebody with cerebral palsy looks like, and what their skills, abilities, aspirations are. We've also discovered that within the community there are those that need support in beginning to develop their own self-confidence and their own self-worth. And so what we're hoping to do is to provide some role models for those people in the community to show them what they can succeed despite living with long-term with a condition. And that's perhaps where evenings like this evening come in. We've tried to present to you other people who are living with a condition but who also have knowledge and expertise. So we've had an evening with Sam James, who's a fitness expert. Miriam has provided us with lovely evenings and support in the last few months, giving her expertise as a neurophysio. And tonight Vicky will talk to us both as somebody with CP, but as somebody who's also worked as an occupational therapist. And I'm sure that Miriam will fill you in with the other exciting presenters that we have coming up in the next few months. But I think that's enough from me. I'm really happy to take any questions about the charity. So pop them in the chat, or you can email me afterwards. And before I go, a little plug. We have recently established some fundraising platforms on a GoFundMe page, because with your support we may be able to continue some of the support programs that we've put into place, because Miriam and I currently are doing this because we really believe in it, and because nobody else was there doing it, and it's something that we're trying to sustain as long as possible. But obviously with extra funding we'll be able to do more, and we'll be able to grow the influence of the charity in the long term. And now I look forward to listening to what Vicky has to say.
Thank you so much, Emma. That's brilliant. Really insightful to let everyone else know what we've been doing. And we got a wave from Evelyn. Thank you, Evelyn. Okay, so I'd like to introduce Vicky. She has cerebral palsy and is an occupational therapist. She has a special interest in community settings, having worked previously with people with learning disabilities and physical disabilities, also working in the mental health sector, and her adult social care work involved both the NHS and her work in the local council area. As I said before, any questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to privately message me, so I will take notes as we go along, and we'll keep the questions for the end of the talk. So I'd like to say thank you, Vicky, very much for agreeing to come and talk with us this evening at our third Chatting With series, and I'll leave it over to you.
Well, thank you both, Emma and Miriam, and it's my pleasure to impart a bit of my knowledge. Just listening to Emma there, I just wanted to thank CP Hub. It was actually a fellow OT that linked me in with Emma after they were both together on a course, on a brainstorming meeting about services for CP, and that's how I got in touch with the CP Hub. And it's been a real lifeline, especially during COVID, having our little Zoom meetups. It's really been helpful, and wider, just knowing that there's other people out there that adults with a CP that, you know, sort of I can see my life reflected in their life. So I just want to say thank you for that. So when I was asked to present this Zoom tonight, I got to thinking, and I thought it's probably best, and it was Miriam's help as well, to begin at the beginning, explain a little bit about me, what makes me tick, that kind of thing, what made me decide to go into OT later on, but starting right from the start, how things were for me in the beginning when I was little. So right from the beginning, I wasn't diagnosed with CP until about 2.5, which according to some people is you know, average or a bit late. And I had various operations to get me walking. It probably sounds familiar to a lot of you as well. Had quite a bit of intervention when I was younger, so physio, doctors, surgeries, orthotists, that kind of thing. Some support at school, but it could have been better, just put it that way. You know, sort of, it wasn't really nuanced to the needs that I had, and that just kind of got worse into secondary school. Maybe that's because I had mild CP, and it wasn't, I kind of didn't fit within the criteria. I'm not quite sure, or whether it was just the time we're looking about 20 years ago now, which makes me shudder. So yeah, that was schooling. I got through schooling. I always had an ambition that I wanted to go to university, mainly because you know, everyone else was, and my sister had gone to university. She's a physio, by the way, so you can see how our minds work in our family. We always want to help other people, but kind of in a allied health professionals therapy sort of a way. I'd never heard of occupational therapy until I wanted a career change, really. And so I started looking, and I wondered why I'd never heard of OT, and why I'd never had OT in my life, because it sounded really, you know, interesting and useful. So I'm sure a lot of you know what have heard of OT or occupational therapy. We're normally the people in the green trousers at a hospital, so you can pick us out from the green trousers, and a lot of time we hang out with the people in the blue trousers, which is the physios. You may see us walking around with commodes or Zimmer frames on our backs, or wheeling quite a lot of them, that sort of thing. So I just want to say all opinions are my own, and this is my experience. So you might have another experience as an OT. I know we've got at least another fellow OT in the room, so she might be able to give you a different stance on things, but this is how it's worked for me. OT, or occupational therapy, it's grounded in the belief that everyone, to live a meaningful life, you need to be able to do the things that you need to do and you want to do. So whether that starting from being able to hold a cup of tea to your mouth, or whether it's all the way up to being able to go to work. And we as an occupation look at kind of how we can facilitate that to happen. We're quite good at looking at your abilities and what we can work with and what we need to change. So whether that be a piece of equipment, giving you ideas about energy conservation, that sort of thing. And I will go into that a bit later on in my talk. So I went to Oxford Brookes University to study OT. Had a great 3 years. It was a really good course, really great place to be. My lecturers couldn't have been more helpful. They were really encouraging and excited that I had a disability, and I was so positive with a disability. They didn't feel it would ever be, didn't think it would hold me back in practice. They acknowledged that it might be a little bit different, a little bit altered, but they were quite behind me in that thought, and I believed them. I don't think it was just a line to get me on the course. So with that in mind, university was university. Lectures, you know, I didn't need any specific help there. That was fine. Placements were the bit that I knew kind of I was going to have different arrangements and specialist requirements to help me get through placements, and that's the support that I had. So we had 3 placements over the 3 years, and most of them were sort of kept quite local to me, so I could stay at home and travel quite kind of not a long distance to conserve my energy, which was great. I had altered hours in the third placement. so I could have a rest day in the middle because it was a bit further away, and that was really great. It worked for me. They provided transport for me. It was fab. And my practice educator, Laura, is who I'm still in contact with today, and she's the one that put me in contact with Emma at the CP Hub. So that was great. I really enjoyed the placements, and it really cemented in me what I wanted my practice to be focused on. I figured out rather early on that I was suited in the community, and what I mean by community is anything that's not on ward in a hospital. I like going to people's houses, I like seeing people out and about. It provides me with the sense of freedom in my practice, and being able to work mostly from an office, but I can work sort of in settings as well. And yeah, that was just where my interest lay. So I had a real interest in working with people with learning disabilities, and within that client group, people with profound and multiple learning disabilities. So what I mean by that is people who have a learning disability but also have many other conditions, and can be quite physically disabled with that. A lot of the people that I used to work with did have cerebral palsy as their main condition, but also as an aside to their other learning abilities, which meant that I gained experience in specialist seating, in moulded seating, in posture, in the importance of specialist equipment for things like bathing, and doing other tasks like cleaning, that kind of thing. But also I did work with people with more a milder level of CP or other conditions, and needed help with getting into work or looking for work or going to study. And that was really interesting because that again used some other skills that OTs have, and I will talk about that a bit later on. That being said, my work life hasn't been without its struggles. I've always felt that I've been I have to push quite a lot to get my employers to see that this is the work I can do, but it needs specific adjustments. Those specific adjustments, you know, might include a specialist workstation for me, or reduced hours or altered hours, even things like someone being able to manoeuvre equipment for me. And whilst on placement at university, and the university lecturers kept saying that yeah, that will be possible, all those reasonable adjustments were possible, I found in reality, and I'm sure other people in work situations, in reality, that's not quite the case. If someone employs me, it's going to take me longer or in a different way than someone without a disability to do the job, and I fully understand that. So I think we still have a lot to do as a society to give people with disabilities parity and equality when it comes to employment. and just let people see beyond the reasonable adjustments that you might have to make for someone like me and you to be able to do their job. So and that kind of brings me to where I am now. So as a lot of other people here can probably attest to, that I had quite a decline quite rapidly in my mobility, and my pain level shot up, and the full-time working that I was once able to do in the community, so that included a lot of driving, seeing lots of people, putting a lot of hours in. That was not possible now, and obviously, so I was unable to do the job that I was employed for. And so I asked for an altered work schedule, and apparently that couldn't be provided for, unfortunately, which brings me back to the point before, and in the end my health is more important than anything, and you know, without my health I can't do anything. So I stepped away from, you know, standard roles within the NHS, which broke my heart, because I've always wanted to work for the NHS. It's a great organisation in my eyes, but you know, it has its flaws, especially when employing people with disabilities. As an employer, it really needs to up its game, but I understand that it can't do that without the money that it needs. So that happened, and it really shook me because I'd worked so hard to become an occupational therapist, something that I really love doing and I really believe in. And I believe that as a person with cerebral palsy, it makes me a better OT. If you cut through me like a stick of rock, the CP and the OT is intertwined. In my head, I can't be one without the other. And I think that's really good, in my opinion. I think it's really good because it gives me empathy with other people that, you know, are struggling with whatever. It doesn't even have to be CE. So if somebody's struggling, then I feel I can empathise. You know, I've got an opinion, a look at life that I can empathise with others. I've got quite a good understanding of environmental challenges people might face, which kind of helped me in simple terms. If I ever went into somebody's house or work environment, I could see really quickly what they were going to struggle with. That being said, and just picking up on equipment, as someone that used the equipment that is provided to us by social services or the NHS, I understand that some of it looks really awful. It wasn't designed for to have good looks, and I think to be able to have a laugh with people in that vein and say, yeah, it's going to look awful, but you can do this, you can do that. I'm all for modifying your equipment to make it fit in with your lifestyle and to make it acceptable to you, because I feel that if you like the look of something, or it helps you in a better way, then you're more likely to use it. Classic example, my walking stick. I wasn't going to go out with a plain walking stick because I just didn't like it. But I modified it, I painted it, I put stickers on it, and it gave me a sense of it being my walking stick. Wasn't it was part of me, and I quite liked it, so it gave me the confidence then to use my equipment, and same with other pieces of equipment as well. But I'll come on to kind of equipment-y stuff later on, and what you can do with equipment that's available quite freely, and some of it looks a hell of a lot nicer than what you might get provided for if you need that and if you've got the opportunity to. So those are the positive things that I believe my CP gives me as a practitioner, and as a friend, and as an advocate, and you know, it's all my experiences in one. It does, however, I feel it does give me an inferiority complex. So, and I'm sure lots of other people have this as well, because the way society is, and because how marginalised people with disabilities can feel, you internalise that. I internalised a lot of it, and I still struggle with it. So when I was in houses or when I was in meetings, I was always like, oh, do they think I'm good enough? Do they think I'm capable being an OT when physically maybe I couldn't do, but I could talk, I could say what was needed to be done, but I couldn't necessarily do what needs to be done. Did I feel good and have the abilities of my able-bodied colleagues? I've often felt embarrassed when I was asked to do something, and I said, oh, actually I can't do that. I can explain to you what needs to be done, but I can't physically do it. I'm going to need some help with that. Looking back on it now, from the outside, it's just thinking that actually it's the environment that is making me struggle in that setting, and it's the fact that my needs aren't being met in such a way that makes my ability to do my role possible. So people with a disability who are in employment or want to be in employment are always, I feel, kind of at a disadvantage right from the very start, and that's another area that probably needs to be, well, does need to be looked into. And I mean, my CE physically, because of the mobility problems that it gives me, do a job that kind of that is in the public sector, so hasn't got a hell of a lot of money, it's got a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape, and not a lot of outside box thinking, to use an awful cliche. It can be really difficult to be in one of those roles with a disability, and I ultimately found it too difficult. So again, I stepped away. I was in the process of, just before COVID, of thinking about a business plan for me to actually be my own consultancy firm. So a lot of OTs now have stepped away from the traditional roles in the NHS, in social work, in social services, and because they found that it's just too difficult to provide the service and give the skill that we have in order to help people with exactly what they need. There just isn't the scope in the statutory services for us to kind of work as closely with people as we'd often like to, and also people are looking for more of a work-life balance, and that was definitely the thing in my case, with the addition of the C on top. So I was in the process of building a business plan of being a private OT consultant, so, and giving people recommendations and that kind of thing, using my skills to enable people in their own life away from the statutory services of the NHS and council, with different things they needed and wanted to be able to do. Obviously then COVID happened, and this new normal that we're now all in, still trying to figure it out, like probably everybody else, in terms of my business plan, my ideas. This is the first time I've done anything like this, which you can probably tell, but I'm really enjoying it, and I'm enjoying being part of the community that the CP Hub has provided. I wanted actually to, when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about in this Zoom, I wanted to make sure that I was offering advice and information for as many people as possible. I know probably a lot of you have had contact with OT in one way or another. Some of you might have some experiences, good and bad, and I'd be interested to hear all about them. But I wanted to make sure that actually you knew kind of that the OTs do some other bits and bobs and things, and if you're struggling with the situation and you can't get statutory support for it, you still know that actually there's an OT practitioner out there, and they might be able to help with things that aren't covered within the statutory services. So yeah, so I believe that OT is best stance for working with people with all disabilities, but especially with CP, because I'm not today, giving people options in terms of equipment. So equipment that is ultimately going to help you live your life, make things easier for you, make things possible for you even, and not just the big equipment, but the little tiny bits of equipment that you might not think of as equipment, that can really be helpful. So I love when people haven't realised that, for instance, if people are struggling getting a mug, for instance, might have been offered a trolley and they really want to use a trolley, it's quite it's not as helpful as they like it to be. They haven't thought of just using a takeaway cup with it on. These are really inexpensive, but actually it can be a lifesaver for some people that want a full cup of coffee and a warm cup of coffee. or a cup of tea, whatever is your beverage choice. So yeah, OTs are really good at seeing what people already have around them, and how they can make it work for them. So whether it be, I don't know, making sure that you've got things placed around the kitchen, for instance, or other parts of the house that that allows you to access everything easily. I'm just looking at my laundry basket. When I hang out my laundry, to reduce the pain as much as possible in my back, for instance, I raise my laundry basket up. Now, I didn't need somebody to provide me with any specialist equipment for that. There is specialist equipment out there, and it's blinking expensive. I just got myself a little stool from Aldi for £5, and boom, my pain was reduced almost instantly because I wasn't doing that bending. But I could also get out the laundry, which was really important to me because I live on my own and I need clean clothes. You know, sort of, we all have these boring tasks that, you know, we all need to do, and I think sometimes statutory services forget that, or not forget it, but are unable to provide support for anything over and above the absolute minimum. So that would be toileting and personal care and making that all important cup of tea and toast. Unfortunately, statutory services, as much as the OTs there, I've been one of them, want to be able to support you to hang out the laundry, or, you know, do a bit of cleaning, do the vacuuming. There's just not the ability to go into that as much. Private OTs can, and I would love to be one of those OTs moving forward. So as I said, sort of equipment options, making things around the house a piece of adaptive equipment for you to make it easier, or changing the way that you move around the house or live around the house, or in your community rather, that makes things easier for you. That also can be in terms of sort of energy conservation or exercise tolerance. And I'm saying this as an OT, and I've tried to put it into practice myself, and it's like everything, isn't it? I can talk the talk, walking the walk sometimes is a bit iffy, but I'm working on it. So yeah, so changing routines for energy conservation, you know, highlighting areas in which are more important to me, but I'm not, or important to the client rather, and not able to access. Sorry, I can see people messaging, and it's really funny because it's like I'm looking in a mirror, which is great. It's really helped me. And understanding a work-life balance, which, you know, at one point in my life, I didn't really have a balance. I was working all the hours I was employed to do 37 hours, and I was doing way above that just because my disability incurred those extra hours. And you know, sort of, that's not sustainable, and it wasn't sustainable for me. So, and as OTs, we're quite good at seeing in people and sort of talking to them about changing things and what's important. So I just wanted to highlight, and also sort of housing options. I'm sure people, and I think maybe Sophie, she spoke in one of the Zooms that she had a kitchen assessment, a housing assessment, which involved an occupational therapist, and I think it's really important to, if people are having housing assessments, that they make sure an OT is involved, especially for somebody with cerebral palsy, because often, and I do this, someone with CP, we're very good at adapting very quickly, often to an untrained eye look like we have no problems with doing a certain task, or that really it's taken us a lot of effort to do in the adaptive way. That's why I recommend an OT to be in those housing discussions, and because an OT is trained to look at how somebody is doing for something, and it's not about stopping people doing it or saying, oh, you need carers. It's, some people do need carers, support workers, and that's how they facilitate their independence. But also OT can look beyond and look into adapting the environment, or talking to people about doing things in a different way. I haven't really touched on sort of mental health really, but OTs are quite good at looking at mental well-being strategies. So be it mindfulness, be it sort of in terms of coaching, or looking at self-care routines, that kind of thing. And again, it's one of those that I can talk the talk, but I don't walk the walk as often as I should. So we're all learning, and also I think she's a quite, well, hopefully, we want to be an advocate for others, and I feel that being an OT with CP gives me a unique point in being an advocate, especially for others with disabilities, because I've been there, I've done it, and I'm quite happy to shout for others. And hopefully we can do that as part of the CP Hub, and that's why I'm happy to be a part of it. So Miriam's just asked if we should go on to the questions. So I've probably spoken and babbled on quite a lot. If people want to get me to talk about something more in depth that I've spoken about, just let me know, because I know that I have waffled on. Any questions, I will try and answer them, and if I don't know the answer, I will get back to you. I will look for the answer and get back to you with some of my other OT friends. So yeah, and I've just got a few what's the word, links to OT pages and stuff that I found helpful, so I'll pop those on at the end. I'll send an email to Miriam and Emma, and perhaps they can be put on at the end of this recording, or on the Facebook page, just so people have got somewhere to go to have a look.
That's really helpful.
Crack on with the questions.
That is so Vicky, thank you so much for taking the time to take us through some of the world as you see it through the OT and CPIs, which has been really insightful.
I hope people understood some of my waffles.
No, it was brilliant. Really, thank you so much. So we've got a number of questions here, and I'm going to start off with they kind of jump around. So the first question is actually from Laura, who is Laura Casey, who is also an OT with CP. So welcome to the gang. There's a few of you here.
Hello, Laura.
And Laura wanted to know, how do you find explaining your CP, particularly to new colleagues?
Oh, good question. With difficulty, I think. Once I'm in the job, to colleagues, you know, it's a conversation. And if they're open-minded colleagues, then it's a lot easier. If people are closed-minded, then you know you might have a more of a talking them round into the fact that yes, I can do my job and I know what I'm talking about, and but these are the challenges that I've had. Thinking about interviews have always been a tricky one. I have been accused by interviewers of talking about my CP too much in regards to my abilities as an occupational therapist, even though I think it's quite important, and it was answering the question, which was a real downer, and you know I could have taken that further, but I didn't. I think because a lot of us kind of, it puts us on the back foot and we go, oh, I better get back in my disabled box. Yeah, so I'm fairly open book. I say it like it is, and you know, at the start of the day you might notice that I've got a disability or a mobility problem. At the end of the day you will, because you know physically you'll be able to see it, and you know, sort of, people have got to live with it. So I'm just open with people.
So that brings me on to the next question, which is
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Vicky? Oh, no.
I can hear you, Miriam. I can hear you.
Vicky, can you hear me, though? No.
No, I can't hear you.
Okay, I'll type the question. I'll type the question.
Oh, now you're back. Now you're back. It's like
okay, I won't type the question. Okay. Can you hear me now,
yes,
Vicky? Good.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. So that brings...
Oh, no.
I'm going to put the questions in the group. I'm going to put them on everyone. How does your CP affect you? Look in the chat.
How does my CP affect me? Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? It's part of my identity, in so much as I'm part of my identity is I'm a disabled woman with cerebral palsy, so it defines me. It defines a part of me. It's part of me, and I'm quite happy to say that. I'm quite happy to say I'm a person with CP. Physically, I have a mainly left hemiplegia, so that means that my left leg and left arm are weaker than my right side. I've always walked with a limp, and that's gradually got worse with time. I now walk with a walking stick. I can't walk very far, really, around my house and sort of for a little walk. I've recently bought a wheelchair, which I spoke to some of you about, and that was a real sort of, I had to get in the right headspace for. I try and keep mobile as much as I can. I live on my own, so I can't have to, with my dog. So I take the dog for a walk. I do gardening. it's kind of got harder, but I've adapted. Like I do sit down gardening now, sit down cooking, and that again has given me another opportunity to think that actually some of the equipment that is provided to people that have to do sit down activities is not up to scratch, because it doesn't really help. So again, I'm always learning as an OT and as someone with a changing disability at the moment. My pain has rocketed really in the last 4 to 5 years. So my medication level has considerably gone up, which has changed my abilities. From Miriam, can you mention some of the pieces of equipment that helps you? Okay, so hopefully you can see this. I've got my standard walking stick that I now use in the house.
Vicky, can you hold on a second? Can I just ask, is Vicky frozen for everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Vicky.
Oh, am I back in the room?
You are now.
Yes, you're now back in the room.
Oh, it's because sorry, I was looking at the questions. Maybe that's why. I'm sorry, everyone. Sorry, everyone. I can hear you now, though. So
that's good. I don't need to type.
So yeah, this is my standard boring walking stick that I use within the house. Everyone's probably seen those. I was really struggling with getting up and down from my sofas. So I bought some razors off Amazon, and then they're nice wood effect, so they blend in quite nicely. They're about 2 inches, and that 2 inches really helps to enable me to get up and down off the settee. I was issued, well, I asked for a commode because, you know, the stairs were a struggle and I didn't have a downstairs loo. So I've got one of the lovely brown and cream ones, but it's nice and hidden in the corner of the room, so I haven't got a look at it. In the kitchen, I now sit down to do some of the things. I had kind of the right level chair, so I just use that. What else do I use? It's not really equipment, but I buy a lot of frozen vegetables, so frozen chopped onions and chopped peppers, butternut squash, kind of just easy things that I can then cook a really nice meal. I enjoy cooking, but the pain was really stopping me doing it. So I do a lot of frozen stuff. I use a slow cooker a lot of the time, because it's just chuck in and then leave and forget. What else? I do a lot of activities now sat down, whereas I was once stood up. I know on the market there are things like, for instance, if somebody likes gardening, there are longer handled gardening tools, so you don't have to bend, or kind of they have various grips. In the bathroom, I've used one of those suction handlebars for a long time. With my OT on, I have to say, you have to make sure that you test it fairly often, because they can slip. I bought a raised toilet seat that was from Lidl. That was one of my better buys from Lidl, and it's nicer than the ones you get from the NHS, and it's got handlebars which really help me. Again, so yeah, just look around. There's a really widening array of things in places like Boots or Lloyd's, especially online now. So it's not just the old standard joke of a bottom wiper, which actually for some people is quite helpful. They have lots of other little gadgets, and you know, as technology is improving, a lot of disabled people now are using being a whiz with Alexa or other sort of voice activated gadgets that turning on and off lights, opening and shutting curtains, that kind of thing. It was once the fact that OTs gave you a kettle tipper, which was it took the strain out of picking up a kettle and pouring if you had trouble with grip or strength. Now you've got like the 1 cup boiling water, like an espresso or something. I've got an espresso because I love coffee, but it's much easier. So things are getting a lot easier with the technology. I'm just seeing some of these messages, and you've come up with a lot of great ideas yourself, a lot of you, so I'm going to be noting some of those down for me. They sound really good.
What I've noticed,
have I sort of said everything on that, or is there anything that you want me to?
I think Emma wanted to come in with a comment.
I can't hear you again.
Can you hear me now? If you come off the chat. Yeah.
I think what I was going to say is what I've noticed is that a lot of the things that we adapt ourselves. So it was interesting to me that you spoke, Vicky, about vegetables, because now that I've found that I can go and buy chopped onions and chopped vegetables, it's really helped me. And I didn't realise until you just said that was something that perhaps an OT might suggest. So that's really interesting that I think as somebody who has difficulties, we look all the time for ways to adapt things, but sometimes we're not the best at identifying where there's
completely agree.
So just sharing one of my experiences with an OT is that we moved into a new house and it had quite a deep back step, which I just kind of struggled up and down, didn't really think that it was a problem. And then I was offered an OT assessment, which I reluctantly said, oh, well, okay, if you want to. And she bought me a silver step that she put outside the door, and it changed my life. And I hadn't realised it was an issue. So I think it's a balance between, yes, we're adapting things for ourselves and we're seeing things, but then on the other hand, sometimes we don't notice about the things that we're putting up with that potentially could be a risk. And also with my speech therapy hat on, listening to you talk about the effort it requires to do something. So somebody who works, so I used to work in eating and drinking, and we used to say when we were thinking about how much food people were consuming and able to consume in a session, they got to a point that if it was too difficult to do and took too long, actually the effort to do it outweighed the benefit of being able to do it. And there's lots of conversations around that, but it's interesting that in the OT world, you also think about how long it takes someone to do something independently and the value of maybe
definitely. Oh, I've lost the sound again. Yeah.
I think what happens, Vicky, is when you go on the chat, you lose the sound.
I'm not on the chat. I'm just.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I'm looking at you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it goes in and out. But you made some really interesting points, and yeah, I think as I've been adapting the way that I do things right from the word go, I think, from talking to my parents. I always wanted to do everything that my sister did, so therefore I was going to do it, but it was going to be in my sort of style and way. So kind of I've always adapted my environment, or even, as Emma said, put up with things that really kind of stress me out and are quite difficult for me, because kind of we're conditioned to think, oh well, we'll just overcome that. We just have to overcome that to do what everyone else can do. So we're always putting loads more energy into everything. I mean, I can't take OT. I don't think I can take all the credit for the chopped vegetable thing, because I think, as Miriam probably remembers from neuro OT, it's no neuro work. It's one of their go-tos for energy conservation, that you look in the frozen veg section. But again, it's just different things like that, really.
Before we move away from the domestic side of OT, because I've got some other questions that go into other areas of OT, I was just wondering, I've had a question about heat-resistant aprons. So for people that are wheelchair bound, when they're cooking, sometimes it's quite difficult to move things around when it comes out of the oven. And some people create, like you've done, modify their environment around using maybe a towel folded up a number of times so that they can transport it. But the questions come in as to whether there's actually a heat resistant apron, like a heat resistant do you know of any on the market?
Be amazing if there was. I've never Richard Lucas just put foundry aprons, which I would have thought probably a heat resistant. I haven't heard of anything, but yeah, that's a thing that I've heard a lot of people struggle with, and you can just the logistics of it to try and move pans and stuff and move yourself in your chair. So foundry aprons are probably one thing to look at.
Corey, do you want to add something?
I would Google is a wonderful thing now, and I'm sure you probably Googled it, but there might be things out there.
I think
if people are really then there is a charity called Remap. I don't know if you've heard of Remap. Basically, they're really cool volunteers who mostly all had a background in engineering, and I've used them professionally. So I've gone to them and gone, this is the issue, they want to be able to do this, can you make it happen? And 9 times out of 10 they can come up with some amazing techniques and pieces of equipment to enable that. So someone in a wheelchair had just had a baby, and they needed a way of holding the baby securely but move around the house, and there wasn't anything on the market. There probably is now, but back then there wasn't anything on the market, and Remap were there to adapt her wheelchair in a way that she could nurse and carry her baby safely while still manoeuvring around the house.
Fantastic.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Vicky, Sophie's
saying Remap are making her tea system.
Yeah, and I think Corey wanted to add something.
Yeah, Vicky, can you hear me?
Yes,
Vicky,
I can.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
we can hear you.
We can hear you.
When I trained as OT, there's actually a website called NRS Healthcare, and they are very, very good for bringing equipment for not just for the elderly, but for disabled people as well. So you can get equipment such as cutlery for those that find it really difficult with their grip. You can get things like that. Also, NRS Healthcare, they do things like you can get equipment that can help with cutting up vegetables if people still have the energy to do that. There's that as well. And also, if people have problems with their muscles, if their muscles shake and they don't have a lot of control of when they're eating breakfast, you can get mats that are, I think they call them non-stick mats, and you can put them down and you can put a bowl on there.
Oh yeah, they're
they
brilliant.
won't move. So that's also very good, because I've got a friend who's got a different type of CP to me, and she uses it so she can have more control of feeding herself. So NRS Healthcare are very, very good for all sorts of different things, and they've also got a little device. Don't really like calling it a device because it sounds a bit mechanical, but they've also got a little thing where if you're still able to, if you can, if you struggle to put socks on, it's a little device where you can put a sock over the top and then you can put your foot in and then the sock goes over, if that makes any sense. It sounds complicated now, but they also do things like that. So there's all sorts of different things, and I think they do a lot of heat proof.
So what I think we'll do, Corrie and Vicky, is when we send out the stuff after the talk, we'll try and see if we can put on some of the links to these sites as well, so that people have got a go-to link. And Richard's put heat resistant apron up there from Amazon as well. So we'll try and gather all that information and capture it so that we can, you know, obviously it won't just be us, you know, us here today listening to this, because I know there are some people that couldn't make it today. So we've got 10 minutes left, but what I wanted to do is explore a different part of OT, which we've had a couple of questions about. One question is around fatigue and, like you said, energy conservation, and asking if that is adequately addressed within OT.
Unfortunately, I'd say I think OTs are probably one of the best professions at acknowledging fatigue and the utter devastation that it can cause to somebody's life. We probably don't go far enough as a cohort, and again that's probably due to, you know, the constraints of the service that people are in. For me, fatigue has really become a massive issue in my life, due to the CP, I think, and getting older. And I've seen the fatigue struggles that clients have had. So the answer is, I think we're one of the best ones to acknowledge it. OT probably doesn't go far enough. We probably need to work a hell of a lot harder to understand fatigue issues and fatigue conditions, and also post-viral fatigue, post-illness fatigue, that kind of thing, especially sort of now, because that's a real issue that I don't think a lot of people understand. But also OT, and I spoke to Mira about this, OTs historically have been very good at, you know, minimizing the effort that's needed and making things easier for people. And while that's really necessary and important to conserve that energy, longer term, I think OTs as a cohort need to be, you know, thinking a bit outside the box in terms of exercise tolerance, and in terms of sort of, if someone is able to get active, then we enable them as an OT to be able to do that, because in the longer run, kind of, it's going to help with their fatigue. I've forgotten the name of her, but there is someone with ME that runs her own training sort of startup to train professionals about ME and fatigue issues. I have got her on Twitter, so I'll post a link to her, but she's really interesting, and I think I learned a lot from her professionally. I think the professions need to really start understanding fatigue and what it, and you know, the reality of it. And fatigue is a real symptom of a lot of conditions. It's not just being tired for a day. It's not just needing a nap. You know, it really affects someone's life 24/7.
So that follows on to another question, whether they're, for you, whether there's a pain and fatigue increase due to stress, whether it was when you were at university or whether you were at workplace or...
Definitely.
Massively. When stress is a physical response, as we all probably know, to sort of like life events around us. You know, so when life got hectic, when work got hectic, I got stressed. My mobility suffered. My pain went through the roof. My fatigue went skyrocketing. And you know, sort of that's expected for anyone, disabled or not, when they have stress. But I think, you know, it's like everything with the CP on top, it just aggravates it completely to another level. So when I started work, my ability to recognise stress in myself and be able to sort of take a step back and work on that were not very good. When I actually got to the point where just the stress got too much and I needed time off, I then realised just kind of what a strain it had taken on me. And I'm now better at definitely Karen. You just end up kind of on a cycle going round and round and round, and you can't get off. And you know, you get off when your body breaks, and mine broke. So yeah, don't get to that level. University wise, I think kind of it was. I think if I was training now at my mobility level now, I would find it. I probably wouldn't. I would really struggle. I think. I was lucky enough that, you know, I was at the peak of my mobility when I was training, so that helped a lot. So I still found things difficult, and I was tired, and the fatigue was there, but not to the level it is now, just as a baseline. So you have to do things within your range of abilities, I think, and you have to be careful not to. I would never say to someone that you can't do it, but people have to be realistic in their goals.
So that brings me on to the last question, Nikki. That brings me on to the last question of the evening, which is, what advice would you give to your younger self? Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I would say to think positively about myself in terms of and I think it's a British condition. We're self-deprecating as a nation, and me in particular, but kind of that self-deprecation kind of putting myself down went to such a level that kind of it was negatively impacting me. So I had no positive self-talk, which sounds a bit, you know, geeky and spacey, but basically it's just kind of, I try, and I fail sometimes, but I try to talk to myself now like I would talk to my best friend, and I wouldn't tell my best friend that you're crap. So I'm not going to tell me that I'm crap. So yeah, I tell my younger self to sort of be more kind on myself. I also tell my younger self to be a lot more vocal with getting the services that I need. So banging my drum a bit louder with people like GPs or physios or that kind of thing, or and kind of trying to get services that perhaps were available that perhaps I didn't access because I didn't know they were there, and they weren't forthcoming. Yeah, that's probably it really. And brilliant. Also I think going back right to the very start when I was at school, sorry, I know I'm going on. In terms of movement and movement challenges and physical activity, I was always put off from physical activity because of the negative experiences I had kind of in PE sessions at school. So I couldn't access doing kind of a sporting activity, so therefore I just sat on the side. They didn't kind of try, and the school didn't kind of try and adapt everything, so that's carried with me, and I was always left out. So I kind of tell myself to get involved a bit more and kind of access sports groups, because that's something that I really feel that I've missed out on, and I would have quite liked to sort of own that really. I've waffled on way too long.
No, you haven't at all. They are very wise words that you've spoken, and I think they don't just apply to your younger self. I think they apply to everybody here, me included. So thank you so much, Vicky, for not only
really enjoyed it,
sharing the evening with us, but also showing your vulnerabilities to us and opening up about, you know, your challenges in such an honest way. So I really value that. Thank you.